Hey, this is Matei.
Hey Matei, this is Mark. How are you?
I'm doing well. Let me see if I can turn on my camera here. I'm on my cell phone, but there we go.
There you are. How
How
goes
are
it?
things? Yeah, we just
Things are well.
I was just gonna say that my wife ended up opening up an office. We live in New York City, but we came up to upstate New York. And anyways, I'm working out of her office this week, and the internet just cut out. Startup problems.
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, as like everyone else, I've been working from home since I guess March, and I decided to build an office shed in my backyard. So I'm sitting
That's
in it now.
awesome.
Yeah, it took me I guess it took me since March because I could only work on it on the weekends, but I did all the floor, I did all the electrical, I did all the walls, I did the flooring, I put a ceiling fan in, and I put some furniture in here. And so I'm set now. I'm set for the
That's
long haul.
amazing. That's unbelievable. That is actually the most creative, like, problem to solve office thing that I've heard so far. That is
It's,
awesome.
it's becoming a huge trend. I mean, once I started Googling it, especially in the Bay Area where I'm based, um, and there's so many different blogs and folks sharing how they went about it. And so I did a ton of research on it, but it is fantastic, man. I've got two kids. They're obviously doing virtual school right now, but my office inside the house, it was sort of in the middle of the home, and you could hear traffic going from the bedrooms to the kitchen to the living room, and then my kids would pop in. And so this has just been like the perfect space for me to focus and to get stuff done. So I'm loving it.
That's awesome. I was so before this, so yeah, we're going through like a whole bunch of stuff. We left the city. We've been basically like living with our parents since then. And in my in-laws' house, they have a detached garage, and there's an attic above the garage. That's why I set up as my office, which is again the same thing. Like, there's room in the house to work, but and we don't have kids. But there's still like having retired parents is almost as bad as having kids because they're always like trying to coordinate their golf games and dealing with all this, so many things that aren't really things, but they're still somehow stressing them out because they have to figure all this stuff out. So I was like, I'm gonna be in the garage for now.
That's great. Yeah, we're all dealing with our own unique challenges in this time. Um, so anyway, that's cool. So you've got some business challenges here that I told Harsh I'm happy to help you with. He gave me a little bit of a background, but I'd love to hear kind of where you guys are at and how I can help.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, thanks again for taking the call. I mean, to just give you a little bit of background on us. So I I spent the first part of my career in at a hedge fund. I was at a fund called King Street, and they're like a very like fundamental type of investor doing bottoms up research on different companies. But my background is more in math and stats, so I was kind of like a quant over there, and I ultimately ended up building the data department for King Street. I was responsible for incorporating all sorts of different data sets to be able to answer questions around the stocks that we were researching that couldn't have been answered before without all the data. And then about like 5 years ago, I left to start my own firm that essentially works with other investors that don't have in-house tech talent and helps them work with their investment teams to help them do better research by answering questions using data that never thought could be answered before. So, so with that, we've been we're completely self-funded. We're doing it the old-fashioned way, trying to get clients to pay us. And look, it's been working. Like, we've been growing. There are now 11 of us who work here. But having said that, like, I'm the only person that's doing sales, and everybody else is working on projects. So there's a lot to learn, and a lot of the sales that we have gotten so far somehow like just fell into our lap because what we're doing is so trendy right now, and everyone wants to do more with data, become more data driven. So every single one of our clients has been an inbound into us, and then it's just like basically at that point, like, don't fuck up, don't drop the ball, you go in there and just make sure you, it's like you take their money. But that is obviously not a sustainable like sales strategy to just always hope for people to reach out to us. And even when people are reaching out to us, because right now after COVID, there's been an increase in market volatility. There's all sorts of questions about all sorts of companies, whether they're going to be around or not. And data is great for that. And more investors are realizing it, so they're reaching out to us to see if we can help them. So we're dealing with a bunch of inbounds. The problem is, I don't really have a sales process. So I tend to do really well, I would say, like on that initial conversation where we're talking about the problems that they're having, explain to them how like we can basically help them solve these challenges. And again, it's kind of easy because they're already coming to me with the problem. I don't have to like pull teeth to understand what their challenges are. They're literally like, they're telling me what it is. I've seen it a bunch of times before. I've gotten better at asking these kinds of questions. So the first conversation goes really well, which is good because in some ways, like we don't like, I'm the product, right? There's no like product that we're selling. It's basically like we're an alternative to you guys hiring hiring a person in-house. And it's just like, that we're basically doing that interview. So, but where I do end up like completely failing after that is just on follow-up. So if they ask us to send them some additional marketing materials that we don't have, and then I have to like go build something. And then by that time I'm distracted by so many other things that a bunch of time passes. I'm like, okay, I should probably follow up with that guy, even though I didn't like give him the thing that he asked for. Or just even once we start going down there's interest, we're having good conversations, but then given to the price point that we operate at, it's relatively steep and it requires a lot of buy-in from senior people in the organization. So then it's the whole like enterprise sales process, which I have like zero experience with. I mean, I have zero experience in sales, particularly no experience in enterprise sales. So figure out like how do you work up that chain of command and figure out how to get more people to get buy-in and be able to pull the trigger on this. I mean, the good thing is I do have industry experience. I've worked at one of these funds. I understand how these decisions get made, but I don't know any of like just some of the strategies, some of the tactics of like, how do you ask better questions? How do you get someone who really likes you to then also go to their boss and be like, hey, you should have a conversation with these guys? Because sometimes, I mean, there's a very rigid hierarchy within these investors to the point where if you're like relatively lower on that hierarchy, you're even embarrassed to send an email to, like, they would in no way send an email to the founder, because that is like, the founder is like God in these organizations. Even though they're relatively small, they have like less than, I don't know, a couple of hundred people, and everyone knows who the founder is. And the founder definitely like knows at least your face, but they would never even like send that kind of an email. And ultimately that is the kind of buying that we need. And so they feel like they need to create tons of like, slides and presentations and all this stuff to be able to then set up a meeting with not the founder, but someone like under him, and, kind of like figure out that whole process. So, I mean, those are some of the challenges that we're dealing with. And it's more about how do we even set up a sales process from scratch? And then also from like the tooling standpoint, I don't really use a CRM. I mean, I have HubSpot, but I'm only using it to take like call notes, and I know I can be doing a lot more there. So that's sort of the background. I mean, and I recently, joined Revenue Collective, which is how this whole thing got started. And yeah, the goal is to try to learn and get better at sales.
Okay. One quick question. Your product, is it a service or is it technology?
It's a service. So we basically become their data team, and it's super, like, it's very open-ended. We just sell essentially like hours, and then they can use that time to work on whatever. So we end up working with them to identify the projects, prioritize the projects, but the ultimate end deliverable is technology. So we're building custom software for all of our clients, and that's, yeah, like they see all this information that they're then using to make investment decisions.
Okay. Taking some notes here. Well, I think a couple things. On one hand, the problem you're trying to solve for, is something that I've spent 20 years working through and under different contexts and different stages of growth. And so I could talk on this topic a long time. So I'll try to find the way to approach it in the most simplest, the lowest common denominator here to help get you kind of to the next stage. There's two ways I'm thinking about it. One is organization. The other one is methodology. You call it sales process. Sometimes these things are used interchangeably, but I'll elaborate on what I mean by that. So let me start with organization, because that's probably the easier one. You talked about a CRM. I think that would be useful for you. And you can start as simple as a spreadsheet, right? You can keep all your stuff organized. Salesforce is way down the road. I think Sugar CRM, if they're still around, they were always like before you need something as heavy as Salesforce, you go get like a Sugar CRM. So I might look into that. But in essence, getting your, it's called your pipeline, right? Getting your pipeline organized, and you could keep it extremely simple into 3 stages: discovery, and I'll use this term scoping, and I'll come back to that in a second, and then proposal, right? Call it a 3-step process. Discovery, you've got it nailed, or you described that one to a T. There's a middle step. In my world, I'm a technology guy, so I typically sell products. There's typically a product demo that happens in stage 2. For you, I think it's more of a scoping exercise. I think it's more of like, okay, now let's start to shape what this is going to look like in the form of hours or services, or, in my world, we might call that an SOW. Like, how do you shape the actual proposal of work? If it's templated, great. If it needs to be built each time, that's fine too, but that's kind of a stage in your process. And then the final stage would probably be, I'll call it the propose stage, which entails executive buy-in, as you just described, as well as any type of commercial agreement, negotiation on price or legal terms or whatever that may be. And in some cases, you may need not, some cases you may not need the executive buy-in. You just go straight to commercials, but it's still contained within that stage. So I might organize your pipeline into those 3 stages. That way, exactly where any deal is and where you need to move it to. I don't know what kind of volume we're dealing with, but I think organizing your world a bit would help you figure out, remind yourself, okay, these are all the deals that are sitting in my scoping phase. So I got to get with them, and I got to make sure we have the package figured out, or, you define the activities that go into that stage, but keep it simple, keep it at 3. So you kind of know where everything's at. That'll also help you figure out outcomes and like where things are getting stuck. And if you're losing certain deals, you can go back and figure out, well, was it what step in the process? Like, did we not know enough on the front end? Did we put the wrong scoping process in place, or did we just we're not getting to the right buyer? Because when you're in the moment, you could think my number one problem is getting to the executive buyer. But then when you look at 20 deals that went by, that only happened on one, maybe it was the biggest one, that it might make you think, well, I got to go solve that problem. But you look at everything else and you're like, well, I just don't have bandwidth, and so I need people. So, in terms of figuring out how you're going to scale all this, a lot of that organization, I think, will help. In terms of sales process and sales methodology can be used interchangeably. It's basically the sequence of events for how you get from point A to point B, and the tactics and strategy you use to get there, right? And there's a lot of methodology out there. The one that I think might be helpful for you, only because you mentioned a few things that I think this would help with, is MEDDIC. If you've ever looked into that, it's MEDDIC. It's actually very, very popular, very trendy right now in the Bay Area. It's been around a long time, but it's just now starting to pick up steam amongst a lot of Bay Area, Silicon Valley startups. One of the aspects, well, there's 2 aspects I think are pertinent to what you described, the economic buyer as well as the champion. And so there's a difference, right? Your champion is someone who will give you like the insights into where their needs are. They might be the one you're on that discovery call with, or they might be the one that gets excited and says, yeah, this is worth pursuing. But ultimately, the economic buyer is the one that's going to make the decision and sign the checks. And so you've got to be able to kind of identify who you're talking to early on. Is this an economic buyer, or is this a champion? And if it's a champion, then you got to know that in stage 3 that you better have a plan for getting to the economic buyer, how you can do it. But it's helpful to know early on, because sometimes that could be a surprise to you down the road that you don't have the right guy to get the deal done. Because you can start laying that foundation earlier. Like, one thing we do is we know our process down to a T. So on our first call, we usually say, here's how this usually goes. We have an initial conversation where we do a bunch of learning. And so it's us sort of interviewing you. The second step is typically where we showcase our product. I'll just use our example. And the third step is usually where a business case needs to be made. There's actually more steps to it, but I'm just kind of summarizing for the sake of conversation. And the way we position it is that final stage where the business case is being made is probably the most critical, because we could spend a whole bunch of time and effort on the front end of this, but if we can't make a business case, then your CFO, your CEO, like your stakeholders and your leadership, they're not going to sign off on it. So let's make sure that as we go, we're building that business case. So when the time comes, here's what it looks like. And I've got templates where we can literally fill in the blanks that I've worked with my other clients. And here's how how you get that done. So a lot of what you're describing, I think, can fit into a 3-step process overlaid with methodology. And you know your business better than me, right? You fill in the blanks, right? As you go and you fill in, like, what has to happen. That way, if you do decide to hire a sales rep, you can basically say, here's kind of the playbook for how this goes. And an experienced sales rep will look at it and say, like, okay, I can run this play, on my own. So let me pause there for a minute and see if all that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. So I guess one question so I really like the whole idea about giving them from the beginning a roadmap of this is how it's going to go. And to your point, just telling them, like, this is what we're going to need from you in order to make this happen. Like, if there's no business case, we're not going to get there. Like, I'm curious about the templates that you use, whether you make them fill in the blanks. Like, obviously it hasn't come down right to some value that they're getting from it. So like some ways they're quantifying the value. Like, what are some insights, like some ways that you guys think about the value you're creating?
So always know this: companies will buy software or service. And I'm going to use software as an example because I know that better, but I think it is pertinent to a service industry as well. But companies will buy software or service for one or more of 3 reasons: to make money, to save money, to mitigate risk. That will always be true. And so the more that you can align your value proposition with one of those 3 outcomes, the better off you're going to be, just at a super high level. So that's where you kind of, as you think about this, that's where you want to start. And so when you're building out your business case, the whole make money, save money, mitigate risk, that's sort of like methodology, right? Like, you don't reveal that. You don't reveal MEDDIC, right? It's just something, it's your framework. It's your frame of thinking for how you're crafting a business case. The business case itself has those 3 pillars, right? And it says, okay, this is the outcome, right? We're trying to save you money by, I think you said it earlier, I don't have to hire somebody. And so I've got this staffing model or this service model that's far more efficient, and it scales, and it's going to save you a bunch of money. These are all the things that you described to me that are manual today or that require effort, that justify this investment for this particular outcome. So you're basically saying outcome, justification, and cost. And that's in one pillar. Now, if you can package up your value proposition where they can actually make money, again, I don't know your industry, but I think you said you're in the investment industry, and presumably if this is more efficient, they'll make more money by increasing their assets or however. And so if you can take what you learned in discovery, put it into that problem statement again for that particular tenant, and say, here's the problem statement, here's what we do to solve that problem, and then here's the outcome you can get, and then here's the cost. So it ends up being a matrix, and I'm using hand gestures to describe a matrix. I actually have a framework on a slide that I can show you that kind of outlines it all. And then the third is mitigate risk, and that, again, that can take a bunch of different forms. There's a lot of security software out there, or there's a lot of risk factors that businesses are trying to avoid because it can be very costly. So it's kind of a wash, rinse, and repeat. So that's how we've made business cases. And then from there, we make case studies out of them. So we use customers to actually validate some of these things. And we say, look, here's the evidence. Like, here's the proof. I can't promise you all these results, but I can tell you that we have tons of examples of where we've done it with other customers. And here's the validation of that.
And so, when you guys, so you mentioned these 3 pillars around, like, making money, saving money, mitigating risk. Like, to the extent that there are some things that can fall into some of those buckets, you kind of like do it combined, or is it better to just stick to the primary motivation and try to build up the case study or the business case around that?
It's the more the merrier. I say, not to say you can't close a deal on just one, but the more the stronger the case, the better chances you're going to have to close it. And so any executive worth their salt is going to say, they're not going to say it this way, but if they can see how you're going to save them money by making them more efficient, how you're going to make them money, it's a no-brainer, right? But if you attach yourself to one of them, as an example, you'd be surprised at how creative people can be to not to solve a problem in a different way, a cheaper way. So if your only value proposition is efficiency, they can find another way to solve the problem, and for maybe half the investment, and still kind of get there, right? So like at my company, we're the premium product. We're better than everybody else. So you would think, oh, it must be easy to sell. Well, actually, there's a lot of vendors out there that are good enough for cheaper. And so we end up selling again. Whereas it's funny because I've always represented the smaller technologies that are going against big incumbent solution. Here it's different. It's like you would think we're number one. It should be easy. Well, you've got all these solutions out there that are point solutions that are good enough. And they're like, well, maybe now's not the time for me to make that big step into all the stuff that you guys offer. Maybe I should take a smaller step. So the more tenants you can position in front of them, the stronger your case will be.
Got it. Interesting.
And it's probably going to be easier for you than it may be for a traditional sales rep, because you know the business really well. And so you can basically take all those problems and put them into these categories, and more easily, because you know the business, and and every customer is going to be different, right? So and that's where it becomes a custom business plan that's designed for each scenario, pertinent to their business.
And when, in terms of the way that you go about this, you actually said you have like templates that you have them fill out, and then at the end of it, you make some slides that they can then share with their team, or how do you communicate?
No, we do all the work. So we try to make it easy on them. We just collect information from them, and then we fill out the template ourselves, and we basically say, here's the business case that you need to, ideally we walk it into the economic buyer, right? And then we do the presentation and we say, look, here's the business case. This is why we're talking today. But if you don't have that luxury, if your champion won't walk you in, then you say, okay, well, here's what, I respect that. I'm not going to go around you and violate our relationship, but here's what you should go and walk in there and present. If it were me, here's how I would present it. I would explain how we got to where we are and the business case. And here you can, this is, so you're making it easier for them versus just telling them verbally, okay, this is what you got to go do. This is how you would position it. And they go in there, and then, it's like, you got to show them. It's like, you got to enable them, right. To go do it. And shoot, I'd even go so far as a practice run, do a dry run. So present it to me. Like, how would you present it? And then give them feedback. I mean, if you could do that, that'd be super cool. It's a little harder to do that, but, yeah, you're making it easy for them. You're building it out yourself. You're making it so that they look good. They can go into the leadership's office and say, here's the research I did. Here's the business case and why I think this makes sense.
Do you send them, like, is it slides? Is it just a couple of pagers? Like, is there any particular format that you like better?
We lean pretty heavily on slides. Doesn't mean it, I think every environment's different. If, PDFs and Word docs make more sense. Let me show you something really quick. This is the framework. Share my screen. Oh, host disabled screen sharing. Uh-oh, can't do that. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why that's disabled, but I can't share my screen.
Would you mind emailing it?
Yeah, I can send you a couple things of what it looks like. It's effectively a matrix. It's got 3 columns, right? And then at the top, in the top row, it's the problem statement. In the middle row, it's the solution. And then in the bottom row, it's the outcome. And then your price tag can be, below that. But it's basically, a business case that's outlined. It's summarized. And again, every environment's different. Like in my case, we can summarize the value proposition. You may need to augment it with some depth and some specifics underneath it in case they want to go. But this is an executive presentation, so the summary level is probably the most important. But some like to go deep. So beneath that, you can have some subsequent slides that go into more specifics. You can also have case studies as subsequent slides that have very similar problem statements as what, maybe the same industry. For us, we cover different industries, so that's a commonality. But just find other commonalities in your case studies that are pertinent to this individual, where they may say, oh, okay, I can see how similar that would be. Like for us, the big no-no is don't go into a CPG, a consumer packaged goods, with a financial services use case or a case study. Like that's an obvious one where it's not going to resonate. But yeah, I can send you some examples.
And how do you guys go about filling this information out? I mean, obviously you have to have a bunch of conversations with it. Is it just with the champion that you're talking to, or do you try to get them to introduce you to others? Like how do you guys do your own like research to come up with this business case?
So if you start from the business case and work backwards from there, your answer, therein lies some of your answer, right? So think of it more in terms of, what do I need to know about a customer that is going to help me set them up for success? So what are those questions? And you said it earlier, you've gotten pretty good at asking those questions. So lay all that out. Secondarily, where do you think those answers are going to come from? Most often they may come from a specific role that you're always talking to, but every company is different. Maybe there's a specialized role that sits next to the primary role. And so it's up to you as a sales rep to figure out, okay, this person, while they're in the right role, they don't have all the information. So I need to go figure out. So you got to talk to your champion and say, who can fill in these blanks for me? Like, who can answer these questions? And the ask lives under the auspices of, this is what we need in order to come up with like a proposal for you. And this is what we need to help like build a business case. So the more that you can help me get access to those people, or that wherever that information lies, the better off the more powerful of a statement we can make together. So that's where, you said earlier about navigating the enterprise. It's think of it as, this is what I need to set you up for success. Where can I go get it? And every company is different, right? You're going to have to navigate maybe some of the politics, or maybe some of maybe some org structures are flat, or maybe some are more hierarchical, maybe some are matrix. That's all stuff you got to figure out in terms of navigating. It's like you're a new employee there, and you got to go figure out how to work in that environment.
Yeah, that's great. And do you guys like when you because another problem that we have is that because our price point is it's kind of high, we have to like, we're often asked to do some kind of a trial, and we're still playing around with like what's the best way to do this. Like, do you have any advice for, because one of the ideas that we're exploring right now, and it seems to be resonating, is essentially, we haven't actually implemented, we just like thought of it a little while ago, is to create like a phase one where it's still a paid engagement, and we go in there for a month, and we essentially, it sounds like I didn't have the right vocabulary for this, but it's basically like they're paying us to go in there and interview the right people and come up with the business case. And at the end of the month, the deliverable is, I mean, it's more detailed, because we're going to talk about all the projects that we would do, and the priority of those projects according to them will overlay the level of difficulty that we think is going to take to achieve those projects, and come up with like an actual game plan for starting out. Because yeah, like the one issue that we were having before is that because this is so expensive, they kind of see the value, and we have had clients pull the trigger without really seeing anything for it, and they're just kind of like a leap of faith. But the more we can do to show them this value, and the problem from our side is that all this stuff just takes time, and like because we're self-funded, we just don't have the ability to do this stuff for free. So we need to get paid. We also like, it's sort of like the concept of a demo, where we don't have like a thing to demo. But in this example, like maybe we'll do like a small, like 1 month, a relatively cheaper engagement where you demo us, like what's it like to essentially work alongside us as we're thinking through some of these like data issues. I don't know if you have like any thoughts on overcoming this, like basically going from 0 to 1. What's our price points are anywhere in the high 6 figures, or like like low 7 figures, and yeah, so they can't see anything. Like, it's not like, oh, here's my software tool that you're building. It's like, that's how much you cost for the year. Great, hire us. And they're like, okay, well, I don't know. It sounds like you're talking or saying the right things, but can you actually right things?
Yeah. Well,
so that's back. It's been amazing having any clients. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I caught it all. You were starting to get choppy there towards the end. It looks like you're live again. Where I would start, the frame of thought where I would begin would be, you have the choice to say yes or no. So as the business owner, as the head of sales, you've got to make that decision for your business. Is this something you do or don't do? And it's a business question you have to ask yourself. Is it too costly for you? Is it too risky? Is it, what is the, how likely are you to win business because you do it? And if the answer is 1 out of 10, not worth it, right? So you got to ask yourself those questions to decide, because otherwise you'll always be in this, do we do them, do we not do them, case by case, and you're just going to constantly kind of be spinning. I've been in environments where we just say no, like we made the decision and we just, as hard as it is, the numbers tell us, that we're successful 1 out of 10 times and we end up losing money because we do it, we do it 9 other times where it doesn't work. That's sunk cost that we don't get back. So we just don't do it for our business. In my environment, we do it. We do it because it leads to success. And over the years, this, as my story goes, in the beginning, we didn't have to because we had so many proof points and our demos were kick ass and like, it was just obvious. Right. But then competitors caught up. And so we needed more proof. And so we started doing trials and then they were like, oh, okay, I get it. And so then now we do trials because they work. We try to, and then we kind of pivoted to like, okay, we need more bookings and trials don't allow us to book revenue as quickly. It has those contingencies that you were describing, right? It's non-committal. And so how do we fix that? And so what we said was, why don't we do workshops? Which for us, and again, we'll translate this to your business, but for us, it's let us go on site, fire up the product. We'll have your data. And so you can see your world living and breathing in our environment. And that should give you the proof that you're looking for. And it was just one step closer to a trial, but not a full-on commitment where we light up the product and we give them the keys to the car. They take it for a spin on their own. So there's different ways of approaching it to keep kind of scope creep and keep control. Another version of the workshop was to use that car analogy again, where yes, we'll let you log in, highly supervised though. We're going to actually be in the passenger seat while you're driving, and we're going to be talking you through it. Because what could happen for us is we hand it over to them, and they go down rat holes, or maybe they go down the wrong road, hit a tree, or go too fast, or whatever. So we have to. It's a guided tour. And that puts us in a little bit more control of the outcome. One other tip is, come up with some kind of success criteria. So, okay, you're like, what is the signal? What is the outcome? What is the data? Like, what is the proof that you're looking for that this is going to work? Let's go do that. Let's not go and give you free product for 3 months or get started and go heavily down this path. And then you're like, still not sure. Tell me specifically where your doubt is, and let's go create a model that's going to solve for that doubt, and then we move on to a full commitment. Because quite frankly, I can't afford it. I can't afford to burn resources in an uncertain commitment, because it just doesn't work for my unit economics. So you can justify some of your points of view or some of your pushback with some logical business terminology that most people can't argue. They don't know your books, right? So they can't
yeah.
So yeah, those are just some thoughts on that.
That's awesome. Really helpful. And I want to be respectful of time. I know we've gotten a little bit over, but yeah, this was really, really helpful. It's awesome. I have learned a lot. So yeah, if you don't mind, whatever you can send, that would be great. And if we can definitely stay in touch if you're open to it. Yeah,
for sure. Since Harsha connected us, I'll look to him to help coordinate and all that. But I'm happy to share some material that I've used. Let me just write it down so I don't forget, because I'm about to hop on to some other calls for the day. So this is the business case. And then was there one more thing?
I think the matrix that you were talking about, I think that was, or whatever else you think might be relevant, but that was the one that you mentioned.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, if you need more help on this kind of stuff, you can tell I'm pretty passionate about it. I love talking on it, and I've been spending a good part of the last 20 years working through these things. So it's always fun to.
I will be careful what you wish for, because I'll definitely take you up on that offer. No, I really appreciate it. Like I have no idea what I'm doing, so all this stuff is really helpful. And then it's like, oh, that's what it's called. You sort of end up reinventing parts of the wheel, and we should have known this in the beginning, because it made my life a lot easier. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool to hear. I love early stage stuff, and it's great that you're digging in and figuring it out. There's folks out there that, like, I got a buddy here that's running an IT business. He's a family friend of mine, and I've been helping him with a lot of the same stuff because he's an IT guy. He knows the product and he knows interestingly, it's a service business also. And so he's trying to hire sales reps, and he's like, what's the right comp plan and what should I do? So sometimes we'll have the families get together. We'll sit out by the pool, just talking business. And it's just kind of fun. And he was contemplating actually bringing on a VP of sales. So somewhere down the road, you might consider that. if the
Definitely,
business.
yeah. No, I'm definitely not opposed to it. I think that is definitely something that we wanna do at some point. Yeah. So all this stuff, and there's so much out. Like I mean, started thinking about comp plans. All these things are gonna play a big role for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, you don't gotta, you don't have to solve it all now. The good thing is you're digging in, figuring it out. That way, when you do hire, a subject matter expert, you kind of know what's going on because you've got firsthand experience. So you're doing the right things by trying to figure it out on your own at the stage you're at.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much again. This was really helpful.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good luck to you. Let me know how else I can help.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Have a good one.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.